Hello, welcome to Comic Tropes. I'm your host, Chris, and I am coming to you right from the heart of Shibuya Crossing, the busiest pedestrian crossing in the world. See, it gets busier. A lot busier. Now, I've talked about manga a lot on this channel in the past, but I've often wondered, what is the best-selling manga of all time, and what does it take to be the best-selling manga of all time? That's the question I want to ask today, because what are the elements, the techniques, the tropes, if you will, that it takes to be the most popular manga of all time?
Comic Tropes. Comic Tropes.
First of all, the best-selling manga of all time is One Piece, a fantasy pirate series that sold over 430 million copies of its books, which is currently up to 88 volumes. The second best-selling manga of all times is a series that many of you will recognize, and it is an influence on One Piece. It's Dragon Ball, which has sold over 240 million copies of its 42 volumes. So when I say volumes or books, I'm talking about these. They're called tankobon, and they're basically collected editions that are a lot like trade paperbacks back in the United States. And they're collected because they are originally published in anthology format. Let me walk over here, and you'll see this is the title that One Piece was originally published in, Weekly Shonen Jump. This title, One Piece, was published beginning in 1997. Now that's an incredible run, because what's unique about Weekly Shonen Jump is that the readers actually vote on what will continue. Weekly Shonen Jump is unlike how we read comics here in the United States. As its title implies, it comes out every week with 40 or so stories that are around 8 pages or so. The pages are cheap newsprint with only a small handful of colored pages, so the costs are low and it's considered more disposable. When a series is popular enough, it's collected into tankobon on nicer paper. Also, the work is generally produced by one creator who is both the writer and artist. For One Piece, that's Eiichiro Oda. Some comics have a writer and artist team up, and almost every manga will often employ assistants to help with inking or backgrounds. The artist will color their own pages if they are featured in Shonen Jump, and lettering is usually completed by the publisher. An editor will review story ideas and storyboards to suggest ways to pace things out best or to punch up ideas, but the creator doesn't have anything mandated. They share the copyright with the publisher, who will field requests for adaptations into anime or toys. There are many such anthologies on newsstands in Japan, but the one we're focusing on will be Weekly Shonen Jump, since that's where One Piece appears. Shonen means young man, and the magazine works diligently to provide material aimed at that specific audience. There are other magazines for girls and adults. The two most popular genres in Shonen Jump are gag manga, or funny comics, and battle manga, or some type of story that features regular confrontations. Popular examples include Dragon Ball and other more recent manga that have been influenced by it, like Bleach and Naruto. Perhaps one reason One Piece is so successful is that it blends the two. It's primarily a battle manga, but has plenty of gags, mostly through its protagonist, Monkey D. Luffy. Luffy is a pirate captain, and is a fairly noble guy searching for the greatest treasure of all, the fabled One Piece, in order to become the greatest pirate of all time. But he's also not the brightest, and he's quite headstrong. On top of that, he ate, by accident, the gum-gum fruit, which grants people a power, but also makes them unable to swim, which is a bit of a detriment to someone who wants to be a pirate. Luffy gains a body like rubber, which makes him powerful, but also pretty funny looking in fights. This is the headquarters of Shueisha. They publish Weekly Shonen Jump, the tankobon collections of One Piece and other very popular comics, in the past Dragon Ball, Bleach, Naruto. So this is where they're all made in a way. Now, it's so popular, Weekly Shonen Jump, they publish about 2 million copies every week. Compare that to a US comic that sells really well, like say Batman. That sells 200,000 copies a month. Think about what a difference that is. Japan has a population of 127 million, compared to the United States, 325 million. But we do share one similarity, and that is how the comics industry was a lot bigger about 20 years ago. In the US, we had Image Comics and X-Men comics selling millions of copies back in the 90s. In 1995, Weekly Shonen Jump swelled to a circulation of 6.5 million copies, but by 1998, it was down to just over 4 million. By 2007, they were around 2.75 million. Still incredibly healthy, and the editor-in-chief at the time, Masahiko Ibaraki, credited One Piece for their sales numbers. So part of why One Piece is the best-selling manga has to do with its timing, debuting when the industry was at its peak, and another is that it's still going today. But it's so far ahead of its competition that it's hard to imagine anyone passing One Piece's sales numbers in our lifetime, especially because of how competitive Weekly Shonen Jump is. I'm here in Shueisha's gallery, which is a very small area on the first floor of the building, and all the editors are working upstairs on the next 2 floors. Now, what makes Weekly Shonen Jump so competitive is those editors every week are going through reader surveys and deciding which of the comic strips are going to get canceled. But with the numbers Eiichiro Oda is putting up, he doesn't have to worry about that anytime soon. In addition to being at comic book stores and newsstands, Jump has its own set of stores throughout Japan where they sell exclusive merchandise for their characters in all of their manga. And as you can see, One Piece is very popular. So what are some of the tropes that play well with the shonen audience that One Piece obviously is delivering to them so well? Well, let's break it down. And keep in mind that these are good rules of thumb, but if there was an actual formula, everyone would make manga this successful. It's all in the execution, as they say. First, you need an easily identifiable and likable protagonist. Luffy isn't annoying or whiny. He sticks his neck out for his friends and wanders around with a positive naivete. And you can certainly recognize him even in profile. His lanky frame and straw hat are easily identifiable in silhouette, and the book even uses that for its letter I. You also need an engaging supporting cast that handles the stuff the main character is weaker at. Luffy can't cook or navigate or sword fight or lie, so he has comrades like Nami the thief, Sanji the chef, Zoro the master of 3-sword technique, and Usopp the storyteller to fill in those areas. And they each have their own backgrounds and motivations for traveling with Luffy. Sometimes it's to reunite with a loved one. Other times it's to improve themselves. But these characters, as well as additions like Tony Chopper the reindeer doctor or Brock the skeleton musician, add to the strange world of One Piece. It cannot be overstated how important structure is to battle manga, and One Piece is great at this. First of all, a lot of the ongoing stories in Weekly Shonen Jump offer up a premise, like becoming the best fighter in the world, but then the creator makes the story up as it moves forward. But Eiichiro Oda has said that he knew how things would end when he began the story. He didn't intend for it to go as long as it has, but he is constantly moving towards his goal and just expands the story for world building or character development when an idea excites him and it fits. But it does feel like things are moving forward. It isn't stagnant or overly repetitive. New family members, governments, and discovering latent abilities like hockey change what we know about the world and characters. It can still surprise the readers. On top of that, it's important for each chapter of a battle manga to offer a confrontation, but still build up to something bigger as the story arcs continue. In other words, Oda must have been working hard the last 20 years to be sure that he's releasing a chapter with a big reveal or a big story climax when other popular series in Weekly Shonen Jump are doing well, so that he can continue to get the votes he needs to keep the story going. Of course, with how well the book has been selling over the last 20 years, Eiichiro Oda doesn't have to worry about the editors at Shueisha canceling it anytime soon. It's earned enough goodwill, licensing opportunities like this whole indoor entertainment center at the Tokyo Tower, that they're not going to end it anytime soon. They want the fans to have a good, satisfying
conclusion. So that's definitely something the editors will work with them on.
So we've addressed characters and story structure, but one last important element to address is the overall premise. It's different from other popular manga like Dragon Ball and Naruto in that those characters are trying to improve themselves, but Luffy and his crew are searching for a physical object. At a certain point, a character will have been training forever, and the reader may start to wonder exactly how much experience is necessary to be the best. But for the Straw Hat Pirates, they can improve or make mistakes, but it's all about them moving closer to a destination. That can go so many ways that whatever the One Piece treasure ultimately ends up being, the most important thing for the readers will be the journey to get there. Because you do feel that these characters are changing and adapting and learning. That isn't the same as becoming a better fighter. They're experiencing all sorts of adventures in a way that's more relatable to all sorts of work and studying. Another important element about the premise is that it's at sea, with fantastical islands and bizarre characters. It's bright and sunny a lot of the time, and it just makes things look fun. And there may be something inherently interesting to the Japanese themselves about a cast of characters out at sea visiting islands, because of course, Japan is an island nation. But even beyond that, humanity has a constant drive to explore and find new things. One Piece, at its heart, is a journey of discovery, something we can all relate to.
Of course, One Piece isn't perfect. One hurdle for readers is the sheer volume of, volumes that there are to read. Now, the thing is, I think that pays off. If you're willing to invest the time, then it pays off. The first 100 chapters are basically all about explaining how the world works and bringing the whole cast together. And then all of a sudden you get to the Alabasta Saga, which is 117 chapters, 5 massive arcs, where all of a sudden the world government it becomes this massive enemy for them, and the world just gets much more complex, the stakes get higher, and it really does start to pay off in a huge way. Another potential drawback is the dialogue. Personally, I don't love it. I think a lot of the characters tend to sound the same, but that's just not where the story excels. It does do a great job at character arcs. There's some really interesting backstories, there's some really amazing story arcs, but the dialogue, not its strong suit. And then, of course, we have to talk about the art. Now, a lot of people love it. It's not personally my absolute favorite, but there's a lot of it that I do admire. First of all, you have to acknowledge, okay, this is written for a younger audience. There's some gags in it, so there are some very exaggerated expressions. It can be very cartoony. Take a look at this. I'm walking through the One Piece shop. I just thought I'd show some of this stuff. But what the artist is great at are things like introductions and transitions. They're so dramatic. They're so powerful. And a lot of the characters will do the sort of classic gag thing of naming their fighting moves. But at least when that happens, the artist Eiichiro Oda can really convey incredible power through how exaggerated some of this stuff is. So I do admire that. Like, introductions, transitions, and the actual action is very well conveyed. And the artwork does actually, of course, improve over time, because this is like over 20 years, so expect some of it to get better. Give it a chance. It's not always everybody's favorite, but it does a lot of things very well. So is One Piece perfect? No. But is it a lot of fun? Absolutely. I hope this look at it has been informative if you're not familiar, and if you enjoy it, I hope you like seeing some of these interesting looks at it through the lens of being in Japan.